Villa Market, now serving the west coast of Phuket. Located on the ground floor Banana Walk in Patong, directly at the beachfront with parking. Visit villamarket.com, the international supermarket.
Well, to continue the story that we've been speaking about, this issue of Australians principally clogging up our hospital system here in Phuket, it's no mistake that we have another two Australians here in the studio to discuss the issue. We've got Wal Brown, he's the head of Region 8, the volunteer police for Patong. And we've also got Tim Shaw, who is the Thailand correspondent for the 7 Network in Australia. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in the conversation.
Pleasure.
Let's start with you, Wal. I mean, you're down on the streets on a daily basis. What is it about Australians when they come to Phuket that they seem to forget all the laws of common sense? I mean, for example, no Australian would go out and just jump on a motorcycle and ride it around without a helmet. In Australia, why do they do it here?
Not only without a helmet, but usually full of alcohol as well. You can do it in Thailand, you can't do it in Australia. Our policing in Australia, our laws in Australia are much more strict. Consequently, when they leave the country, they do what they can. You can walk this country with Thailand with a beer in your hand. You can go from 7-Eleven to 7-Eleven drinking all day, all night. You can hire a motorbike. Usually, people will give their passport for security. They don't even check on the licence.
Yeah. And the paperwork that they may be required to fill in probably doesn't mean that much anyway.
Doesn't. So, a lot of it can be written in Thai. It's an agreement that you sign that you're going to pay all damages relating to the accident to the motorbike, and that's all.
Yeah.
It's not insurance of any sort. You have to have insurance from your own country if it will cover motorbike or motorcycle usage, but not necessarily.
Now, Tim, you've been to Thailand and Phuket before, but you've now sort of moved here on a more permanent basis. I mean, would you ride around on a motorbike without a licence or without insurance?
Absolutely not. And the reality is, as Wal correctly said, you wouldn't do this in Australia. You're not allowed to, by law, to ride a motorcycle without a proper motorcycle licence. If you're riding a bike without a helmet, you'll be pulled over immediately by the police. You can't legislate against stupidity, and unfortunately that's what happens when a lot of Australian tourists come here. They're having a great time, they feel over-governed and too many laws in Australia, and they're let and set free here in Thailand. If you injure a Thai person while you're riding a motorcycle and you haven't got the appropriate insurances, you will be in serious trouble. You've broken Thai law. And whilst you and I might think some of the laws of Thailand are difficult and tough, they are their laws. We are guests in the Kingdom of Thailand. So the land of the smiles will welcome you, but liao dao kun, my bad Thai. What that means in Thai is it's up to you. If you want to drive a motorcycle without a helmet, 3/4 full of alcohol or drugs, and if you have an accident and kill yourself or injure someone else, it's the end of your life. Was it worth it?
Yeah. But not only are these people doing these things, but they're also ending up in the Phuket hospitals. If they don't have health insurance, they'll be taken to Vashira, to Mission Hospital, both very good local public hospitals. They will be treated because those hospitals are required by the Hippocratic Oath to treat those people and look after them. But they leave the hospital sometimes without paying the bills. I was speaking to Vashira Hospital, and they were saying that most of the people who are coming through there, their figures, most of them are Australians. This would be, I would say, an international embarrassment to all Australians.
It would be, and it could be right. I'm not saying that 50% sounds like a pretty high figure, but it makes no difference what number. The number is not necessarily going to be the problem. It's everybody that goes to Ventura, they leave without paying. They've broken the law.
Yep. And the other factor we've got too is that the hospital systems in Australia care for Thai people as well.
Of course.
And we have 100,000 Thais living in Australia. We have students there, and we have 30,000 Australians visiting Thailand per month, 960,000 last year. 111 Australians died in Thailand last year. Now that actually represents the highest number of tourist deaths of Australians than any other country in the world. How many by natural causes? How many by those accidents? I've visited those hospitals you've spoken about, Vachira, and they are well-run hospitals. They're doing their best, but over 140,000 Australian dollars was left unpaid by Australians allegedly aged between 30 and 35 with no travel insurance that came in, got the services from the hospital and left without paying.
So you've got these two problems. You've got these Australians seemingly behaving badly by firstly coming here and flouting the laws or the common sense and just getting onto motorcycles, no top, perhaps drinking a whole lot of booze, no helmet, drugs, no travel insurance, no medical insurance. They go to the hospitals and they leave without paying the bills. What is it about the Australian psyche that seems to put Australians at the top of the list for the people who are flouting all these laws? We sit here as three Australians. Let's try and get into the brain of these people.
I think if you were to go back and people arrive here, straight to Bangla Road, straight into the alcohol, the beaches, drink all day.
Okay, but well, if you're a Scottish tourist or an English tourist or a Scandinavian tourist or a tourist from any other country, you could do all these things as well.
I think Australians are renowned as being a very friendly group of people when we travel. Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. There's Aussie bars and pubs all over Phuket, and we are a spirit of camaraderie. When the footy's on, we crowd around the television. We drink.
We drink more.
The
Aussies drink more than the Europeans when they're here in Thailand.
We're a drinking culture. There's no responsible service of alcohol laws in this country. There are OH&S issues. So you've had a few beers, you slip over on a wet floor. Well, in Australia, you'd be suing, but you're not suing. You're going to hospital.
Right, but you've said that Australians drink more here than other cultures. Again, why is that?
Drinking culture.
We are a drinking culture from home, but at home we have restrictions. Correct. We can't drive because of the drink driving laws. There is restrictions on how much the bartender can sell. Here, no. Here it's just money. You know, it's a matter of getting it across.
Tim, we also have criminal activity in all countries that Australians visit. There's increased drugging using drugs like Rohypnol.
Yep.
So the increased use of Rohypnol in this country, 2 young tourists were found in the bush after 3 days, completely stripped of all of their clothing, their wallets, all of their valuables. We've got situation increased use of Valium and Xanax, so people think that's a great night out to take what they think is a prescription drug. And we've also got people all over the world, but Australians travelling here with mental health issues. They increase the amount of alcohol they drink and forget to take their medication. We lost a young 24-year-old Australian recently who thought he could fly off a 3rd floor balcony. So, do we have deaths in Australia? Yes, we do. Do we have shootings, muggings and stabbings in Australia? Yes, we do. But here in Thailand, it's been published all over the Australian newspapers that this is the most dangerous place in the world for Australians to travel, Phuket, Thailand. That concerns me, that concerns Wal, and that certainly concerns Larry Cunningham, our honorary consul here in Phuket.
But what does it also say about the type of Australians that are travelling to Thailand? Because we're not hearing about this problem with Chinese tourists or Korean tourists, or even to a certain extent the Russian tourists. A lot of them who come in organised tours on buses and are taken from place to place. It's a particular type of Australian tourist that tends to be coming here and causing these problems.
Australians have got more money than most of these other countries. When they come on holidays, they spend more. It's a known fact. They spend more on alcohol. They want to get their good times. They want to get their rocks off and get in there and do it. They want to get on the street. They want to get and mix it. They walk around with attitude. It's not only the guys, by the way. A lot of the girls are just as bad.
Yeah.
Just as bad, if not, in some cases I've seen girls absolutely worse. The attitude of the Australians to get their mate drunk. It's a bucks party, it's a birthday party. Let's get him drunk. And they get out on the street. We had one here 2 weeks ago. This girl, absolutely drunk.
Paralytic.
All the rest of her group wanted to keep partying. Put her in a taxi and send her home. She couldn't even get in the taxi, never mind get out at the other end.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to go home with her. They wanted to drag her around Bangla Road, and she was vomiting, and you know, she smelt like
Yeah.
You know, not a good look.
Tim, I think we've got to make this very clear point that the Kingdom of Thailand welcome Australians, nearly 1 million last year. And
we're spending so much money.
We do, as Wal said, spend a lot of money. But please be responsible for yourself. Wal Brown and his team do extraordinary work patrolling Bangla Road as a liaison to try and help not only Australians but nationalities from all over the world. But the ultimate reality is we've got to take responsibility for ourselves. We've got schoolies coming up, and that's going to be a serious problem. The drinking age, the legal drinking age here in Thailand is 20 years of age. If the Thai police decide to have a crackdown, we're going to get phone calls to mum and dad at home going, I'm in jail, Mr. Brown is here and he's explaining I have to pay a very big fine. This is going to be a problem.
They're not going to have a crackdown.
So mums and dads know that their kids are coming to have a great time.
Yeah.
Mum and dad go, don't go to Thailand. The kids go, yippee, we're going to have a great time. All I'm saying to the kids, and I've got teenage children myself, is we have got to be responsible and respectful. This is Thailand, it's Thai law, and what we think's right at home isn't necessarily right here in Thailand.
Tim, you should be at the police station there after midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, when a lot of the people have been dragged in there because they've been drunk, they've been sick, they've been abusive, and the language they used for the police in Thailand is disgusting. They might get away with it in Australia. You won't get away with it here in the Kingdom.
These ones that are causing the problems and filling up your prisons or your holding cells or whatever you've got in the Patong area, where do they come from?
All over Aussie, mate.
They are all over Australia.
Are they mostly Australian tourists?
Mostly Australian.
Yes. Well, we've got a problem, haven't we? Yeah. As a nationality, when we've got people, such a high proportion of Australian tourists causing these problems. Can we get into the possible solution sort of phase? And to me, it seems multifaceted because you've got scooter renters, motorcycle renters, renting out these scooters without the appropriate paperwork, very cheaply, very easily. You can go down to any corner and rent a motorcycle. Maybe you need to show your passport, but that's about it. That's part of the problem. And then you've also got the problem that the helmets that they might be giving you to wear may not be fit for purpose. They're not saying that you are required to wear this by law. If you don't wear it, all these are problems in themselves. Where would you start to sort out these problems of Australians harming themselves?
Keep them all at home, mate. Keep them all at home. Now, where you started, Thailand has had this crackdown now for just over a year with helmets. The police,
and it seems to be working.
It is working. It is working. You'll see there'll be a checkpoint down the road. The people will come towards the checkpoint and they'll put their helmet on. They go through the checkpoint, they take their helmet off.
Yeah, yeah. But there is, I think we could all say, there is
Number two, licensing. They have a car licence. It's in English.
Yeah.
The Thai police don't read English. Yeah. They produce their licence. When they get stopped, the police look at it.
That'll do.
That'll do.
Yeah.
It's a licence. That's okay. It's not a motorbike licence. And there's a lot of difference between riding a motorbike, riding a car.
Of course.
There's a lot of difference riding in Australia and riding in Thailand.
Correct.
With the number of people, the number of motorbikes on the road, it's quite hazardous, and it's usually somebody coming from behind that knocks somebody off a motorbike.
Right. Well, that's I suppose, part of the problem of trying to stop people getting on a motorcycle and knowing the legal requirements when they do so to start with. But then you've also got this problem of when they end up in hospital, how can we get it through to principally young male Australian tourists between the age of 30 and 35 apparently? How can we get the message through to them that they need to have adequate travel and health insurance when they come to a country, any country, but here in Phuket?
Smarttraveller.gov.au is a great place for all Australian tourists to visit, and I think smarttraveller.gov.au needs to update the importance of medical insurance, which it has there now. It needs to cite some examples of where tourists have got themselves into serious trouble.
But you can't mandate that people go to that website.
Secondly, Australians are free and independent travellers. The largest number of free and independent travellers in the world, and all those other nationalities come with tour groups. Most tour groups make it mandatory that you have all your documents when you arrive or you're about to depart. So FIT Australian travellers need to take responsibility for themselves. They will be fined in this country if they break the law, and in some cases, what we're looking at Vachira Hospital having you had you speak to them, is that they're probably going to need to secure the Australian passport before they treat that Australian. He needs his passport to leave the country, and until he pays his bill. That'll be some of the measures I think the Thai authorities will bring in, because they can't afford 145,000 Australian dollars every year for Australians not paying their bill.
Well, what about mandatory health and travel insurance for Australian tourists?
Discriminatory.
It is discriminatory. You get elderly people who come over here having a good time, having a holiday, can't afford it.
And they won't be insured by those. They won't be insured by those insurance companies because they're over the age of 70 in some cases.
Travelling, the older you get, the harder it is.
The other situation I spoke to Vashira Hospital about was not only the tourists, but the expats. Long-term expats who have been here on the island, and we may fit this category one day.
Yes.
We've decided to live in Phuket. We can't afford the health insurance required to go to a really nice hospital if we do get sick, and as we get older we're going to get sicker. And these people are starting to clog up the hospital, the public hospital system, and they're also not paying their bills.
Well, that's one of the problems which you're going to have, and that is that if you can't afford to live in this country, you don't live in this country.
And you have to prioritise your own individual responsibilities, that I have a roof over my head and shelter from the cold, but I need to guard my well-being and health. And I do believe from the research I've done that there is a degree of affordability in local health insurance, and many expatriates are taking that responsibility for the well-being of themselves and their family, because at the end of the day, family members that Wal has to call, and the outstanding members of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in the Bangkok Embassy are regularly speaking to family members. DFAT in Bangkok is the busiest embassy in the world for consular activity on behalf of the Australian government. The busiest Australian embassy because of these issues.
And the visa requirements here should be such that you have to have the money to live here.
Yes.
Well, you're required to have the money, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend it on health insurance. So that's another one of these problems.
Vexing challenges.
I'm going to give you both I'm giving you like a sceptre to have the responsibility, the overall responsibility of fixing up these problems of Australians behaving badly and not having travel insurance. I want you to come up with the one thing that you would do and mandate if you had the authority. Wal, you're first. Guess what? You're second.
We know who all the people are. If they go to hospital, photocopy of their passports taken by the hospital, they don't leave the country until they pay their bill.
I want to see better information and education, particularly on the inbound flight. As important as here are the exit rows, this is the emergency lighting. We need some take care in Thailand. Have a terrific time here. Do not ride a motorbike. Do not take illicit drugs. Do not overuse alcohol.
No one's going to come.
Don't do anything in this country that you would not do at home. The rules of Australia are very strict. Don't bend the rules in Thailand because it will get you into trouble.
But isn't that part of the reason a lot of these people are coming here? Because they can have a really good time and do things that they can't do in Australia because the fun police have made it impossible to have a good fun life in Australia.
True.
Look, I believe ultimately Australians are great tourists globally. We are ambassadors for Australia, and every time an Australian acts in a very poor way, it's great Australians like Wal Brown and the rest of the Australian team here in Thailand that are having to pick up the pieces. So Aussies, be responsible, act responsibly, and have a great time in Thailand.
Yeah, look, I suppose we should say there are many tourists coming from all around the world, including Australia, who do come here and have a great time and don't cause these hassles.
Correct.
But it is the few Australians behaving badly that are causing these headlines and clogging up the hospitals that we're drawing attention to today. Wal Brown from the Royal Thai Police representing Region 8, thank you very much for coming in. And Tim Shaw from the Channel 7 network, the Thailand Corespondent, thank you for your time.
Cop and cup.
And I'll get a iron for your shirt next time. Thank you both very much for coming in today. And that's Phuket News TV, having a look at a really important story, and thank you for joining us.